President Obama spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast on Thursday morning, and his remarks on religion reflected much of what we're seeing play out overseas today and in recent weeks.
As we speak around the world, we see faith inspiring people to lift up one another, to feed the hungry, and care for the poor, and comfort the afflicted, and make peace where there is strife.
So far.
But we also see faith being twisted and distorted, used as a wedge, or worse, sometimes used as a weapon. We see ISIL, a brutal, vicious death cult that, in the name of religion, carries out unspeakable acts of barbarism, terrorizing religious minorities like the Yazidis, subjecting women to rape as a weapon of war, and claiming the mantle of religious authority for such actions.
So far, so good. But what President Obama said a few seconds later set off a firestorm of outrage on the right.
Humanity's been grappling with these questions throughout human history. And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ. So this is not unique to one group or one religion. There is a tendency in us, a sinful tendency that can pervert and distort our faith.
So were President Obama's remarks the simple truth or inappropriate and off the mark? Reverend Paul Raushenbush is the executive religion editor at the Huffington Post. And Reverend Raushenbush, thank you very much for being here, first of all. So I want to get, first of all, your reaction to the president's speech at the National Prayer Breakfast.
I thought it was one of the best speeches that he's given in recent years. I thought it was so important for him to name what's going on in religion, to lay out where we are and where we need to be. Religion is the cause of a lot of strife right now. And he named it, and he named ISIL a death cult. He talked about the atrocities that were happening in the name of religion, but then he also said, this is not what religion should be about, and we all have a responsibility in all of our faiths to make sure that it's not about hatred, it's not about harming other people. In fact, it's about lifting other people up and being more unified. And he gave many examples about how faith does that.
Yeah, and so that was your take on it, your reaction to it. I want to play you the other side of it, because it did provoke a very angry, a very furious reaction, I will say, a very immediate and negative reaction from some of the president's friends on the right. And I think Charles Krauthammer crystallized those arguments on Fox News. Let's listen to Mr. Krauthammer's take on the speech.
Here we are not 2 days away from an act of sort of shocking barbarism, the burning alive of a prisoner of war. And Obama's message is that we should remember the Crusades and the Inquisition. I mean, for him to say that all of us have sinned, all religions have been transgressed is, is adolescent stuff. Everyone knows that. The overwhelming volume of the violence and the barbarism that we are seeing in the world, from Nigeria to Paris, all the way to Pakistan, and even to the Philippines, the island of Mindanao in the Philippines.
Australia.
Is coming from one source.
Yep.
And that's from inside Islam. It is not the prevalent idea of Islam, but it is coming from Islam.
And I should mention that the administration did respond to the Krauthammer-esque criticism aboard Air Force One. You did have a press gaggle in which the statement was made that the president has spoken many times on his belief in American exceptionalism, not only because of military might or economic prowess, et cetera, but part and parcel of the U.S. standing in the world is our values. And he said part of that is holding ourselves up to our own values, and so that when we fall short, we need to be honest with ourselves and look inward and hold ourselves accountable. But speak for a moment, if you could, to that criticism that at the moment what we're dealing with is a militant strain of Islam, and for the president to take the focus off that right now was inappropriate. How do you respond to that?
I think that Absolutely, we need to be talking about that. And the president is talking about that. He had met the day before with Muslim American leaders to address that directly. In the National Prayer Breakfast, where we're really supposed to talk about prayer and faith and the goodness and our community in general, it's not the time to start pinpointing one religion and saying, this is the source of the problem. What it is a time for, his speech was actually a spiritual exercise. He talked a lot about humility, how we all have to be aware of humility, and what he was doing was kind of practicing what he's preaching. He was making himself, I admit, in my tradition, there are things that we have done wrong. You have to do the same in your tradition, whatever tradition that is, and especially in Islam. I think you don't need to point at that constantly for that to be true. But I think what we saw immediately was the high horse that everybody ran in on. They got on their high horse and said, well, Christianity isn't this. And that was exactly what he was warning against. If we're going to defeat radical Islam or radical any other religion, we need to all do it together. And that's what I think he was trying to do.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate having your take, the Reverend. And I will say that for all of those who are listening to this, I will repeat it, the Reverend Paul Raushenbush. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And that does wrap things up for The Reid Report. I will see you back here on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to visit us online at thereidreport.msnbc.com. The Cycle's next.